Hi there, welcome to another episode of the Infinite Danger Room podcast. I'm Matt Price. I'm joined today by Chris Borthick. We're going to give you a Star Trek special here on the show today, and we're going to talk about Star Trek Beyond, as well as some other stuff that's happening in the world of Star Trek as the show reaches its 50th anniversary. So, Chris, you're a longtime Star Trek fan, as am I. The third film in what's now being called the Kelvin timeline happened with Star Trek Beyond. This is the series of movies that were started with the J.J. Abrams reboot, and then the sequel was Into Darkness. This is now the third one in this series, starring Chris Pine, Zachary Quinto, Carl Urban, Zoe Saldana, and some others as well. So let's just go ahead and say it's a Star Trek film. What do you think? How did you enjoy it? How does this fit into the canon? Where does this rank among your favorites? And go from there.
All right. Well, first of all, I want to say I was very pleasantly surprised by the movie. I actually feel that this was one of those movies where the trailer sort of made me not want to see Star Trek this time, because I felt it was playing up more of the I'm a Fast and the Furious type angle. But I actually thought that this particular Trek movie is perhaps better written than the second one, and maybe on par rivaling with the first one. It was an interesting concept for sure, and some great casting and some surprising twists that really brought it home and kind of married it into the Star Trek mythos.
And Simon Pegg, who plays Scotty, was one of the writers. He's also a longtime Trek fan, so I think he's obviously wanting to please that audience while still appealing to maybe the fans who came on with the reboot, who are maybe acclimated to a little more action-packed Star Trek universe. So, I don't know, you want to give kind of just if people haven't seen it, you want to give them kind of the basic pitch. Here's kind of the story, and then we'll go a little bit from there.
Well, it kind of plays on some old themes from some of the other movies with Kirk and the gang on their 5-year mission, and I think the gist of it being that Kirk's feeling that bit of doubt, burnout on is he supposed to be a captain? Is this really what he wants to do? And so he's kind of doing the soul searching bit, and they're going to the new space station, which reminds me a lot of Deep Space Nine, which I appreciated just architecture wise. Its silhouette I felt like an homage, which was good. But anyway, there's a distress call. They head out to help some aliens who have been shipwrecked on a planet. It's a trap, and things go from there. So I really thought it was a very well written and well woven plot. I appreciated the throwback to the Enterprise TV show era ship and some of the twists. Spoiler alert. That they managed to weave into the story there. So a good piece of Trek canon, I think.
One thing that the movies have done very well, I think, is casting their main characters. I think one of the reasons I came out and was very positive about Into Darkness, and I think people later, as you get farther from it, you maybe have more problems with it. But one of the reasons I think I was so positive about it upon its initial viewing is just these actors play these characters so well. So while you would think, boy, Kirk and Spock and McCoy are so iconic in my head, how are anybody else going to play them? They do a pretty good job getting over that hill, which is not perhaps one that you would think would be that easy to climb, but now they're into their third films with these characters, and they're beginning to inhabit them, and you're seeing some differences, but they're very believable as these characters. I guess just the question that maybe we have as longtime Trek fans is, because we knew Kirk and these guys from so many episodes, the 80-some episodes of the original series, and the movies were sort of a secondary, bonus. But with these characters, the movies are basically what we know them from. There's no additional canon, really. I mean, there's some comics and some things, but essentially the movies are what we know them from, and the movies are at least half action, seemingly. There's a lot of action to them to make them competitive in today's marketplace. I don't know if that leads us to believe, well, will we love these characters as much as we did the originals, or is it just going to depend on where you came into Star Trek as a fan, do you think?
Well, I think I think it's probably going to depend on your fandom, really, and where you entered. But I mean, it's done pretty well with new viewers and getting new fans onto the Star Trek boat, which is great. But I mean, I think part of that is, people who watch the movies then go back and look at the original series, and they look at some of the other Star Trek that's out there to find out what's going on. Well, where is this coming from? What is this big Romulan ship? Where can I find out more about this? So I think it's kind of it's tying into the mythos, but I don't know will we love their this new original series crew as much? Maybe not, just because I don't think we can see all their adventures, which is what we're missing.
I don't know if the thunder is hitting for you guys. We're recording in the middle of a thunderstorm, so bringing you the excitement. I would watch a show with these characters portrayed by these actors. I just don't know that you can afford to do that.
Right.
But yeah, I thought it was, certainly a fine third movie. I mean, you start to worry about as these franchises go on, but a fine third movie in a series. I think if you like action-type films, it gives you plenty of that. But if you like the Star Trek character stuff, it gives you a lot of that as well. So I thought it was a solid entry into the franchise. Carl Urban is fantastic as McCoy. Really well done all around. I think fan or non-fan, this is something that you'll enjoy. I think getting away from doing something that felt like a remake was good. This was an original adventure. Right. They also introduced a new character, which I think is an important thing to do. Bring new things into the mythos. Don't just be bringing in characters we've seen before. And so the female character that aided them on the planet, that's a cool new addition to the franchise. Has a cool look. So that's somebody maybe you could see in a future movie or a book series, or you could spin her off into something else.
Yeah, and she had a lot of popularity on the internet and in the reviews. People really liked her character, so I think we will probably see her again. The other thing that they did that was it was subtle, but it was there, and they had talked about it on some of the news feeds and stuff, is that Sulu has a husband and a kid in this movie, which was kind of a new twist for that character. So that was an interesting thing. And then there was some poignant stuff too, of course, being conscious of the fact that this is Anton's last turn as Chekhov because of the tragedy with the car wreck and, the car accident. And, of course, the Leonard Nimoy passing away is touched on in the movie as well.
Sad news about Anton Yelchin, who was doing a fine job, and I guess from what I understand, they're not going to recast. They're just going to maybe go forward. But speaking of going forward, what do you think is going to happen next for the Kelvin timeline or the Star Trek universe?
Well, we're already to a new starship, so
yeah.
I assume we're going to keep going with this 5-year mission, and I don't know if they're going to try to do V'ger. I don't know if that'd be a good idea.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I would like to see them do a version of the City on the Edge of Forever with the Guardian.
Yeah.
And do some time travel, maybe.
There's certainly a lot of episodes or things you could remake. I almost would like to just say I'd like to see completely original stuff that I haven't seen before, because then you don't necessarily suffer in comparison. But that said, I could see pros and cons for both.
Well, and the Doomsday Machine would make a fantastic movie. I mean, the planet-eating
there's a lot to it, absolutely.
There's a lot to that. So, I don't know. I'm betwixt and between. If you do a remake of it well enough, I mean, because let's face it, Into Darkness was sort of Wrath of Khan. So,
right. So the opportunities are there. There's lots of canon you could draw from, or like in this case, you could go off in a fairly new direction. So let's see. There's other Star Trek news, and I guess we might as well segue into that.
Sure.
At Comic-Con, they released the name and the ship, which are the same, for the new Star Trek TV series or streaming series, but I guess you call it a TV series that's starting in January. Star Trek Discovery. The premiere or the pilot will air on CBS, and you'll be able to watch it on CBS All Access after that. So for one, they're certainly wanting Star Trek fans to buy into their service, and some of us who are maybe hardcore Star Trek fans feel like we almost have to. We've been waiting for a Star Trek series for quite some time. But based on what you've seen so far, What do you think?
Well, I'm intrigued about where they're going to be going with this, and as a Star Trek fan and somebody who probably knows way too much of the canon and backstory stuff, looking at that ship. Well, first of all, the design to me is very much Star Trek Phase 2, which was prior to the motion picture being made. There was a plan to relaunch the television show as Star Trek Phase 2, and that ship looks remarkably like, I think it was Ralph McQuarrie's sketches for the new ship.
Did they say some of this was from the Ralph McQuarrie sketches?
They haven't officially said that.
Okay,
but
I'd heard it been said. I've heard it said, but maybe it was a non-official.
It may be unofficial. It certainly looks like it. The low registry number also indicates that it may perhaps be actually pre-Kirk's Enterprise, but I don't know if that's something we can absolutely go with or not. I did read an article from the San Diego convention that said that they hinted that we would see familiar characters, so I don't know if they're meaning that we could see some of the original cast from some of the television shows at some point, or if that's a thing. It looks like it might be being set, prior to Kirk's era, and that could also be why Axanar drew so much fire as a fan film.
Because it's around the same era.
Because it could be that may be what they were doing, and they were like, "Oh no, you have to stop." So,
I'm really glad to see Star Trek back serialized because I do think that's a way that it works very well. And we haven't really seen a Star Trek series since we kind of went to, Enterprise a little bit, but where you have sort of that whole season sweep where there's a big bad and you're kind of working toward it. Original Star Trek is mostly pretty episodic. And then Next Generation is also pretty episodic, although you build some relationships along the way. Deep Space Nine is closer, but even so, you didn't really, other than maybe Dominion War, you didn't necessarily have big sweeping arcs like you have much more frequently in television now. I guess you could argue in some ways Voyager, their whole series, had the point of trying to get them back, but I think this will give the opportunity to do something with Star Trek that we haven't seen necessarily done with it before. And I think with them releasing it streaming, they're going to know how many they have and how much time they have and all that sort of thing. Right. Although, from what I understand, they're not going to release it as like a binge watch. It's actually going to be an episodic week by week type release. What do you think? Would you have preferred a binge watching opportunity, or are you okay with them parceling it out like you would if it were a television series on a broadcast network?
Well, I think I'm now from the era of I like to watch Daredevil in like 2 days. So yeah. I would love to have it all available at once so I could watch it and then watch it again. But there's some joy to still watching episodic television. I watch Arrow and Flash, and every time the episode ends, I'm usually like, "Is it next week yet? Can I watch this
right
now?" So. I think Star Trek will do well that way. I think doing it on their own streaming network is probably the biggest gamble of everything, because will I probably buy the streaming network just to see Star Trek? Probably. But will everybody? I don't know.
And from what I understand, outside of the U.S. and Canada, it's going to be available on Netflix.
Yes.
So maybe they're hedging their bets a little bit, trying to make, I don't know what the finances are, but if they could make their money on that, and then I don't know. But so there's a little bit of a hedge, and that if it doesn't go in the U.S. and Canada, the international markets are going to have it on Netflix. But I do think they're definitely trying to drive their numbers with this, which is maybe a smart play. I guess we'll see sometime in January how they feel about it. So you also mentioned there are some other Star Trek happening, so why don't I let you give the high points of those as well?
Well, this is more in a gaming aspect, but Star Trek the role-playing game is apparently coming back later this year, and it's Star Trek pen and paper role-playing game a la, you would know it as Dungeons & Dragons, Pathfinder, all of those variations of role-playing game where you play a character on a starship in this case. This particular role-playing game they've released a press release on. It will be set in the Prime universe, and we'll have access to all eras for play, so original series, Next Generation, the movies, Enterprise. It will not, however, have any information about the Kelvin era, apparently, or at least initially. One of the other interesting aspects of this particular role-playing game is it's going to be the first time that Star Trek will have a real organized play option for conventions. So this means
Interesting.
There will be a society that you can have a character in, and you could go to, say, San Diego Comic-Con if they're running Star Trek, and you take your character and you play with a bunch of other people to get credit for your character and thus level them up in adventures at the conventions. So
Could be very cool.
yeah, I know I have friends here that play in Pathfinder Society, which is the organized play for Pathfinder Dungeons and Dragons. So seeing that as an option for Star Trek could be really fun, and I'm looking forward to seeing how they execute it, because Star Trek is hard to execute as a role-playing game.
Very cool. Yeah, well, with it being the 50th anniversary, I recently had a chance to interview Paul Reditis, who wrote the Star Trek book from DK, and that's got kind of a like an in-universe look at the various stories. So if you want to know about what they think in-universe about the Romulans or the Enterprise or the various ships, the various storylines, that's a pretty handy book to have. And you can find my full interview with him on newsok.com. That's one of many things coming out kind of as the 50th anniversary has been going this year. Speaking of which, 50th anniversary, and we didn't ask this about the film earlier, but it kind of ties in with that too. What are how would you rank your favorite films? And then of the series, what are your favorite series?
Okay. So films. My favorite films are probably, I really like Star Trek VI, The Undiscovered Country.
Okay.
It is one of the most interesting political and action intrigue sort of Star Trek movies, and even Star Trek stories. So I really enjoy that one. Wrath of Khan is kind of the seminal Star Trek with Kirk as well, but I'm still going to give Undiscovered Country my favorite. Bow on that. Followed probably by Voyage Home, because it's so much fun. And then I will move into First Contact with the Next Generation crew and the Borg. That was a fantastic movie. So those are probably that'd be my top four.
Okay.
And then for the series, wow. Well, I am a huge Deep Space Nine fan. I love Next Generation. Don't get me wrong, but Deep Space Nine to me was a great series, because you got to have a more episodic or less episodic, more story arcs, which was actually came about thanks to Babylon 5, because they were competing with a show that was doing story arcs, and so they picked up the pace, thankfully, for all of us. And we got the Dominion War, we got all sorts of great things, and Deep Space Nine has one of my two of my favorite episodes in it, Pale Moonlight, which is the episode where Benjamin Sisko and Garrett conspire to assassinate a Romulan to get them to join the Dominion War, which is very cool. And then, of course, More Trials, More Tribulations, the time travel episode back to the original
Very
series,
fantastic episode, absolutely.
Awesome. After Deep Space Nine, I would probably actually go original series, though, because, I mean, you can't beat some of the writing in the original series.
Yeah.
I mean, the sets and some of the stuff may be dated, but, man, the stories were really good. And then I would probably throw Enterprise in, particularly Season 3 and 4, for the amazing storytelling that they started doing. With the exception of that last 4th episode, which I refuse to acknowledge. But those are my favorites, I think.
Okay.
Next Gen's great, and Voyager has its high points, but Deep Space Nine, original series, Enterprise.
Okay, very good.
How about you?
I think probably if I had to say what was the absolute best, Deep Space Nine is probably what I would say. Next Gen is really where I came into it. I'd watched Star Trek some as a kid, but I always was a little more of a Star Wars guy. I'd watch Star Trek because it had spaceships and phasers, so why not? But Next Gen is when I kind of became a big Star Trek guy. But now my favorite is probably the original series, just because it's kind of grown on me, and maybe because I remember from being a kid, and now I kind of get it. So I enjoy almost any kind of Star Trek on TV, although those first few seasons of Voyager are a little tough. But right now, I'd probably say if you said, "Hey, you want to watch some Star Trek?" I'd put on original series. For the films, probably my favorite four are probably the same as yours, although maybe in a different order. I might have Voyage Home as my favorite, just because, and that was another one that I went to as a kid, and I don't know, just love that movie because it's got a lot more humor than what you maybe expect in a Star Trek, but it's done so well.
I think 4 really captures the spirit of the original series, because you had fun episodes in the original series.
Yeah.
And I think that harkened back to that, which was fantastic.
So, yeah, I'd probably say something like 4, 2, First Contact, 6. I wonder, thinking about it, and I may have to think about it, I might have said if I do a top 5, would I put the reboot into the top 5? And, I mean, I would think maybe, Beyond is not that far off from... But I would probably, if I had to say a top... I mean, I might say the J.J. Abrams is my 5th favorite Star Trek film if I had to pick a top 5. I mean, the Next Gen ones are fine, but some other than First Contact, they mostly kind of feel like longer episodes for the most part. And then the original cast ones that we didn't mention, Search for Spock, I don't have a problem with. It's maybe one of the stronger of the odd-numbered ones.
Right.
The original movie it's very slow. I can enjoy it for what it is, but it's very slow. And then 5 is problematic in a lot of ways. It's not that it doesn't have its moments, but it's problematic. So if you're looking at if you're rounding out a top 5 right now, you might consider one of those two as being close to a top 5. I would probably say the reboot film I might have to rewatch it, but I might say would fill in my top 5, which might offend purists, but
and that's the thing with the I really don't have an issue with the rebooted Star Trek movies at all.
Yeah,
there are several purist friends of mine who hate them with a passion because they've changed everything, etc., etc. But I look at it as a couple ways. That reboot movie was done in a textbook Star Trek science way, where they even say, this is an alternate timeline. So that doesn't mean that everything we love went away. This is just an alternate version.
Yeah.
So I thought that the fact that it was so well written, and Leonard Nimoy shows up to kind of usher them in. It's a phenomenal relaunch, and I remember coming out of the theater just being wowed by the fact that Star Trek was back.
Right, sure. And just getting it back is something that was kind of important to those fans that want to continue to enjoy it. If you want to continue to enjoy it, they've got to make new stuff.
Yeah.
It's not that you can't be a fan of something that doesn't have new stuff coming out, but it gets a lot harder.
Right.
Something like, Green Hornet fans, you're going to be waiting a while, So if you've got Star Trek giving fresh content that people like, that's just good for you as a fan. I'll have to think about Beyond for a while, because there's a lot of things to enjoy about it, and I don't think it's... I think... And now, here's a question. For years, the deal was the even-numbered ones were the good ones. And now, it seems like with the reboot, people liked 1 and 3 better than they liked 2. Have we flipped it?
Maybe. I still... For all its weaknesses, I still like the second one.
Yeah.
It was just a little too much Wrath of Khan, I guess, for me. But
yeah. Now, is the first reboot, would it be even numbered if you counted all of them?
Let's see. Did we have 9 originally?
I think it would be...
Yeah.
Or what? Which one was Nemesis? Was Nemesis a 10?
I think Nemesis was 9. Maybe. We'd have to look that up.
Anyway.
It may still hold then. We may like 10 and 12. So, if we're renumbering them, it may be the odd ones are now the strong ones. So,
anyway, I think it's a good time to be a Star Trek fan. 50th anniversary.
Oh, yeah.
Looking into the future, you're going to have a new streaming, at least one season that's coming out, and could be more. I would think they would give it more than one season, but you never know. You at least got one season to try it out. If you want to try out their streaming service, you got a new film that's doing pretty well, new game, several books out for the 50th anniversary.
Well, I'm sorry, Star Wars is back. Paramount's going to try to throw in, because this is kind of what they did when Star Wars first came out back in the 70s. suddenly we went from having a rebooted television show to a motion picture to jump in on the sci-fi. So I think they're probably going to do the same thing and try to jump in on everyone's love of science fiction and superhero action right now, and they're smart to do so.
All right, so thanks to Chris for joining me for this Star Trek focused episode of the Infinite Danger Room podcast. You can follow us on Twitter at Danger Infinite, or find us on Facebook at Infinite Danger Room. Our episodes are being released on SoundCloud via NewsOK and at newsok.com. So thanks for checking us out. Feel free to check out our other episodes, and we will see you next time.